Hey, Miami Vineyard, so good to be with you. So good to be with those of you joining us online today. Hey, come on, let's make some noise and welcome in our online Vineyard family. Wherever you're joining us from, watching us from home, wherever, my name is Kevin. I'm one of the pastors. And so last weekend, we had a little fun. We started by giving a list of some Miami things that bring us joy. So this weekend, I thought we'd take it the exact opposite direction. And this weekend, I got a list for you of some Miami things that steal our joy, that kill our joy, that rob our joy. So I got a top 5 list of Miami things that take away our joy. All right? Here's number 5. Cockroaches, right? You see one of those? Your joy's gone. All right? Number 4, rush hour traffic. Yeah, and it's not just rush hour traffic, isn't it like anytime traffic? It's like it just doesn't matter. All right, here's number 3. Summertime FPL bills. Those can be fun. Yeah. All right, number 2. The line at Chick-fil-A drive-thru. Now listen, Chick-fil-A does a great job. They do a fantastic job, but sometimes that drive-thru line can be a little long. So let's go. I need a little drum roll, drum roll. Number one. That steals our joy. Number 1, the Dolphins. Yeah! The Dolphins haven't won a playoff game in 25 years. But anyway, who's counting? So, listen, there are a lot of things in life that try to take away our joy. But today, I want to talk about, as we continue our series, I want to talk about how we can be joyful no matter what. This weekend, we're in part 2 of a series that we started last weekend called Joyful. And by the way, if you missed last weekend, you've got to watch last weekend's message as we kicked off this series talking about how you can have joy in every relationship you have. I gave you 4 things that you can pray for the people in your life. All the people in your life. Both the people you love and both people that are hard to love. I gave you 4 things you can pray for those people. And I've heard stories from some of you, and the stories have been amazing. And so I just want to encourage you. I want to encourage you to go and watch last weekend if you missed it. So here we are in week 2 of the series. We're looking at one particular book in the Bible in this series. It's going to be an 8-week series as we journey together through the book of Philippians in the Bible. Interesting with the book of Philippians, it is one of the shortest books in the Bible. It's just 4 chapters long. But in those 4 chapters, the word joy, gladness, enjoy, happy, so forth, are used 17 times. And what's even more interesting about this book is the author of the book, a guy named Paul. You would think when he's writing this book about joy, he would be in his joyful place. Maybe he'd be on a cruise. Maybe he'd be at Disney. Maybe he had a resort like the White Lotus, but he is not. He is not. Do you know where he is when he writes this book? Prison, right? He's in prison, and so he says, I think I'll write a book about joy. And so let me give a little more additional background about this guy, Paul. So, leading up to him writing this book, so the 4 years leading up to this, he finds himself in jail that entire time. First 2 years in a town called Caesarea, and then they take him from Caesarea and transfer him to a prison in Rome. But to transfer him there wasn't flying. They took it was a big trip, and he had to go by boat. And so as he's traveling by boat, a huge storm comes up. He gets shipwrecked. He floats on a piece of wood to an island. On the island, he gets bit by a poisonous snake. And then they transfer him to Rome, where he's chained to a guard 24 hours a day. And Paul says, I think I'll write a book on joy. I mean, if anybody has a story that says how you can be joyful no matter what, it's this guy. It's Paul. And so Paul invites us. So we're going through book of Philippians. So we kind of did the first chunk of chapter 1 last weekend. This weekend we're going to do the second half of chapter 1. We're going to do chapter 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 4 and 4. So here's a second part of chapter 1. Paul offers to us, invites us into 3 choices that we can make in life that we can have joy no matter what. That no matter what happens to you, around you, you can have joy no matter what. Paul gives us 3 choices that we can joy-proof. We can joy-proof our life. So here we go. I want to encourage you today. You might want to locate some message notes as we get started. Message notes are all virtual. You find them on our Miami Vineyard app. So if you don't have our app downloaded yet, go to your app store, search Miami Vineyard, and you can find them there. Or you can scan this QR code in the seat back in front of you. It's a free download to our app. Once you get the app downloaded, tap on This Week and then Message Notes, This Week and Message Notes. Or in the room today, you can find a copy of these notes at the back pub tables any day that you want them. Anytime you want them, they're there for you as well. They got some Bible verses that'll help you track with me. So here we go. Here's the first choice Paul invites us into. If you want joy in your life, no matter what, here's what Paul says. Here's the first thing Paul offers. See God's perspective. See God's perspective. I wonder how many of you enjoy watching these kind of reality cooking shows on TV. You know, like things like Chopped and Hell's Kitchen, Top Chef. Let me see your hands if you enjoy watching some of these reality, cooking shows. They're real popular, right? They're real popular. If you ever watch any of these shows, they're really quite interesting. Because what happens is the contestants get these crazy ingredients, and then they have so much time to create something delicious. I mean, they might get stuff like squid, olives, jelly beans, and cayenne peppers. You've got 30 minutes, go. And on the surface, you're thinking to yourself, there's no way. Like, these ingredients do not fit together in any way, shape, or form. But if you watch the show, the contestants take these ingredients, they don't all succeed, but they make this incredible, delicious dish out of those ingredients. Somehow they make it work. Do you realize that's exactly what God does in your life? He takes these crazy things that happen to us in our lives. God doesn't cause them, but God can cause them to work together for good. And God takes these crazy ingredients in our lives, things that we look at like, there's no way this could work with this, or this could work with this, or this could ever lead me to this. And God will use them in our life. Why? Because He's the master chef. Come on, somebody. He's the master chef. So look what it says in Philippians chapter 1, verse 12, where the second chunk of chapter 1. Paul says, speaking of what we just talked about, he says, I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me here has helped to spread the good news. So he's not only referring to what happened to him on the way there, which I just described, but he's talking now about everything that's happening to him right now as he's in prison has helped me to spread the good news. Again, a little more story about Paul. Paul had dreamed. After Paul's conversion to Christianity, he had dreamed about going to Rome, about speaking about Jesus in Rome. This was always been his dream. He wanted to plant churches in Rome. He wanted to talk to people about Jesus in Rome. This has always been his dream. His dream is coming true, but just a little different than he planned. He finally made it to Rome, but now he's in prison, chained to a guard 24/7. And Paul's just not any prisoner. He's kind of a big-time known prisoner. So they chain him and he's not chained to the wall. He's not chained to a post. He's literally chained to a guard 24/7. And so what they did back in that day, they would rotate the guards and change the guard every 4 hours. So every 4 hours is a new guard. And, some of them are repeat customers, but you can imagine, over years, months and years, Paul gets to know these guys. They know him, and he knows them, and they talk, and they're chained together. And Paul could have used that time in jail. He was in jail unjustly. He should not have been there. And Paul could have complained about it. Paul could have, did anything. But instead, Paul takes the opportunity God gave him. See, Paul's looking at that as an opportunity. He's taking the opportunity God has given him to be in that prison. And he impacts these guards in such a way that some of them actually become followers of Jesus because Paul decided he would look at it as an opportunity from God instead of a prison sentence. That prison sentence was an opportunity from God. And all this happened because Paul was in prison. And not only that, do you realize when Paul was in prison for that period of time, Paul used that time as an opportunity to write a lot of the Bible. The book of Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon, 2 Timothy. A lot of the Bible was written because Paul took that and saw that as an opportunity. It wasn't his plan. It wasn't his dream. But Paul surrendered his life to God. And God used it as a master chef. And God brought good out of it that nobody thought could ever get good brought out of it. Question: can God do the same thing in your life? Oh, absolutely he can. Yes. Yes. I have seen it. I have seen it. In my 35 years of life, I have seen it over and over again. I've talked with so many people over the years who've experienced an illness. And I'm not talking, the flu. I'm talking about an illness, the C word, the cancer word, the whatever, some kind of illness where they were ill for at least 6 months, sometimes years. And these same people will come back around and they say, Pastor Kevin, I would have never planned it this way. But they say, this being down like that for that length of time has caused me to reconsider my life in so many ways. And they say now, since that illness, they say, I am not the same. I take time to enjoy life now. I'm not so stressed. I value people. I value relationships like never before. And they say, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I wouldn't change it for the world. Can God use that in our life? Absolutely can. Or maybe you've gone through a really tough breakup. I mean, it was horrible at the time. Stressful, painful, emotional, all those things. But some of you are looking back now on that situation and you're going, thank God I didn't end up with that person. I'm just curious. Let me see your hands if there was somebody in your life that you broke up with that you were grateful you didn't end up with. Can I see your hands? You broke up with? Yeah. Come on, somebody. Yeah. Now, in the chat right now, just go and put their name in the chat. Just go ahead and fire that out there, people. Listen, God will use things. Or maybe it's a financial situation. People I know, friends of mine, both in this church and outside this church, laid off because of a job, downsizing, whatever. Maybe just went through a tough season financially. People have lost a job, they've lost a home. And they tell me, Pastor Kevin, I would have never planned this. But God used it in so many ways that I would have never have imagined. And they tell me, almost everybody to a person says, Pastor Kevin, I am so much happier now than I was before. Now they had a lot before. They thought they had it all. But they didn't have it all, it had them. They didn't realize how much it had them. They said, Pastor Kevin, I didn't even realize because I was just caught up in it, chasing the dream, chasing the almighty dollar, chasing this, chasing that. Pastor Kevin, we were chasing everything, but we didn't realize the impact it was having, the negative impact it was having on each other, on a spouse, if they were married, on the kids, on even God. They said, Pastor Kevin, we were not honoring God. We weren't giving God back that first part, that first 10%. We weren't honoring God. We were just chasing the almighty dollar. And they said, Pastor Kevin, I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but I'm so glad this happened to us because we are different people because of it. And I just want to invite you here tonight, all of us, that I just want to invite you that whatever, this financial season we find ourselves in right now, the economy, it's up and down, it's all around. We don't know what's going to happen with all this kind of stuff. You guys know the same news I know. But can I encourage you, personally, our trust is not in what happens with this economy. Our trust is in the living God. Can I encourage you? Can I encourage you? Because what happens in an economy like this, we can get fearful. And what happens all the time, when we get fearful, what happens is we begin to hold on instead of let go. That's what fear does. Fear causes everybody to hold on and not to let go. And can I encourage you, our trust is in God. Do not, can I encourage you, do not stop giving to God that first 10%, because that belongs to God. And that opens the window for God to continue to bless us in our lives. So I want to encourage you. If you might want to be making, I don't know, you can make some changes or do what you want to do, but do not make that change with God. Keep honoring God with that first 10%, because that's how we see it from God's perspective. He's the master chef, and he will work things out in our lives. So that's number one. Let's see life. Paul says, you want to have joy? You want a joy proof? You want to joy proof your life? He says, number one, see it from God's perspective. Here's number two, give God control. Give God control. Because Paul says, I am not going to allow my circumstances in this jail, and he says, I am not going to allow people to rob me of my joy. People. We talked about people last week. Talk a little bit about people again right now. Because Paul in his life, even though Paul is in prison right now, in jail right now, Paul is still getting the good news of Jesus even outside the jail. But he's got people on the outside doing stuff against him, speaking against him, doing stuff against him. And Paul lists, in Philippians chapter 1, Paul lists three kinds of people that he has just giving him a hard time and trying to steal his joy. And I promise you, you probably got some of these same people in your life too. Here's what he says. Notice what he says in verse 15. He talks about critical people. He says, it's true that some people are preaching out of jealousy and rivalry. Another translation of the Bible says, there's people that love to argue. Have you ever met anybody like that? They love to argue. Don't look at them right now. I mean, come on, you're in church. But they just, there's people, they just love to have, it's like they stir it up. They just show up to stir it up. They cause conflict, they create controversy, and then they try to pull you into their stuff. Maybe you work with them. Maybe you live next to them. Maybe you live with them. It seems no matter what you do, they're always critical. I remember years ago here in our church, it was much smaller, but I would finish speaking on the weekend, and there was one particular dude, a guy, and every single weekend, after I was done speaking, he would make a beeline to the stage, and as soon as I would walk down the steps of the stage, he was there waiting for me. Every week. This went on for months and months and months. Every week. And he felt it was his job to criticize my message. Every single week. There'd be some aspect of the message he would criticize. And I remember one time after, this went on for I was just being, really a nice pastor dude. And I remember after about 3 months of this, I looked at the guy and I said, hey, listen, why don't you, and I said it really nicely. I said, why don't you find another church? There's a lot of churches, and obviously you don't like this one because you complain about something I say every week. You know what he said? He said, God sent me here to help you grow. I can't tell you exactly what I said because I'm in church, but no, I was nice. But it's like, why didn't I think of that? Obviously, it's not the case. He was. I don't know. People like that are critical all the time, they got a lot of stuff happening in their life usually. It's usually not about you. It's about something happening in their life. But there was this one time, he was so frustrated with something I said. And he said, and right here in the front of the stage, not this stage, but the stage we're at the time, he threatened to take me out in the parking lot and beat me up. And I looked at him and I said, you don't realize who you're messing with. This guy was about 6'2". He was big dudes, like 6'2". I said, you don't know who you're messing with. 5'10", 175 pounds of twisted steel. I said, you have no idea what you're messing with. Thank God for his safety team, because the safety team came and ushered him out of the building. And we didn't see him much after that. Thank God. But Paul says, we have got critical people in our lives, and they try to take away our joy. And Paul says, we're going to get to this in a second, but Paul says, you don't have to allow that to happen. So first kind of people is critical people. Look what he says in the next verse 17. Paul talks about competitive people. He said, others do not have pure motives as they preach about Christ. They preach with selfish ambition. Selfish ambition that people have almost always comes out as competition. And you have people in your life that just feel they have to compete with you. It's no matter what you do, they're like competing with you. And it robs you of your joy. People that compete with you. And think about it. You can have competition over anything. You can have competition over your lawn. You can have competition over the car you drive. You can have competition how many followers you have on socials. You can have competition about your drip. You can have competition about your hair. But I'm just glad I got hair. But all these things. But when people around you are always competitive, like it just drives you crazy, and it can take away your joy. And then, so Paul talks about critical people, competitive people, and he talks about, look at the next one, he talks about conspiring people. These are people who try to bring you down. They conspire against you. They try to bring you down. Look what he says in verse 17. Others, they just want to stir up more trouble for me and add to my pain while I'm in prison. He said, these are the kinds of people out there that are trying to bring me down. And they just want to stir up trouble. Their mission in life is to bring you down, to make you miserable. And Paul says, these three kinds of people. And he lists them. The critical, the competitive, the conspiring people. If we don't deal with them in the right way, they're going to bring a lot of unhappiness to our life. Because they'll rob you. They can, if we allow them to, they can rob us of our joy. But notice Paul's attitude. I want you to see Paul's attitude. So remember, he's already in prison. He's already in prison. But look at his attitude in verse 18. Look what he says. He says, so all these people are doing all these things. But he said, but that doesn't matter. Whether their motives are false or genuine, good or bad, the message about Christ is being preached either way. So he says, so I rejoice. Don't you just love this guy's attitude? He's got all these people out there speaking against him, trying to bring him down, trying to disrupt his message. He says, but that doesn't matter. And here's what Paul is saying. He said, I am not going to allow any other person to control my attitude and steal my joy. He said, I'm not going to allow that to happen. They can do what they're going to do, but I will not allow them to control my joy. There may be people criticizing me for what I'm doing. There may be people who feel they're in competition with what I'm doing. There may be people conspiring to make sure I fail with what I'm doing. Paul says, it doesn't matter, because what I'm doing is I am continuing to focus on Christ. That's what I'm doing. He says, when I continue to focus on Christ, he said, these people, and you got them in your life. We all got them in our life. You got them in your life. These people conspire against you to try to bring you down. Sometimes they say it to you face to face. Sometimes they post things about you. Social media posts about you. Often, very seldom do they say it face to face. They just often tell others. And then word trickles back to you. Can you believe so-and-so said whatever? And we got all these people in life. But Paul says, I am not going to let these people bring me down. And Paul is reminding us. Paul says, listen, in this life, Paul says, you're going to have problems with things, circumstances, and people. He said, it's part of life. Jesus said it this way. Jesus said, in this world, in this life, he said, you will have trouble. That's what Jesus said. He was speaking to Christians. He said, in this world, you will have trouble. But he said, but take heart, for I've overcome the world. But he said, Jesus said, you're going to have troubles in this world. And nobody has promised us a problem-free life. Jesus didn't. If somebody promised you, like the Bible says, we're supposed to have a problem-free life, that's nowhere in the Bible. Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. And Paul goes on to say, look what Paul goes on to say in chapter 1 of verse 29. He says to us, to Jesus followers, he said, For you have been given not only the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of what? The privilege of, wow. There's a word we don't like to think about. But Paul refers to suffering as a privilege. Like, what gives, Paul? What you've been smoking? Suffering, I mean, think about our lives. We do everything we can to avoid suffering. Everything we can. And Paul says, suffering is part of being a Christ follower. It's part of it. That's part of the way we grow. And this year of 2025, I said the word for the year is grow. We're trying to grow as people, trying to grow as followers of Jesus. We're trying to grow, and we try to avoid it. But do you realize there are some benefits of suffering? Let me give you a couple quick benefits of suffering. I had to put them on the outline, but just a couple quick benefits. One is this. You know what suffering does? Suffering almost always leads us back to God. Almost always. You know when we drift from God? We don't drift from God when things are going crappy. We drift from God when things are going well. You can read the entire story of the Old Testament of the people of Israel. Life is good, life is good. They forget about God. So God sends a few problems their way, and all of a sudden, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Suffering leads us to Him. Do you realize the number one reason people come to church on a weekend, not just our church, any church on a weekend, besides the fact that someone invited them, is crisis in their life? That's why they come to church. So suffering can lead us back to God. So that can be a really positive thing in our life. You know what suffering does? Suffering helps us grow, helps us mature. We don't mature on cruise ships. We mature when things are not going so great. We grow in that stuff. We grow when stuff happens. That's how we grow. So suffering, and a third benefit, you know the third benefit of suffering is? It allows us to empathize with the suffering of others. Empathy is a good thing. Empathy is a godly thing. Empathy is a biblical thing. And allows us to feel the pain of what others go through. Do you know, every night when my wife and I sit down for our evening dinner together, I pray a simple prayer, and part of it goes like this. God, thank you for this food we're eating. And I follow it up and I say, and God, I pray for everyone around the world who's not eating like this. That's just a simple prayer of empathy and caring for people that don't have what we have and experience what we experience. Empathy is a good thing. It's a godly thing. Because look what Paul says in Philippians 1:30. He says, in next verse, he says, we are all in this struggle together. He says, we're all in this together. We all got these people. We all got these circumstances. We all got life. He says, we are in this thing together. It's the beauty of the church. He's reminding the church in Philippi that we are in this thing together. You are not going through this alone. You are not going through your struggles alone. We are in this together. Paul says, I'm in this together with you. You're in this together with me. And the beauty of the church is that we are in this together. It's the beauty of the church. And so I just want to invite us to not go through this Christian life alone, but go through this life with other people. You need people. We have a value here at church that we call better together because we believe wholeheartedly that we are better together. You can find community here in this church. That's why I want to encourage you to plug into a small group, to plug into a serving team, to plug into just anywhere here at the church. We have this coming Saturday, we have a class. It starts at 10 o'clock called Growth Track. Growth Track is a way for you to plug into this church. You might want to check it out this Saturday from 10 to 1. It's a class that'll help you plug into this church and get more involved in this church. It's called Growth Track. And I just want to encourage you. I talked to somebody just this week who was going through lots of challenges. One of the challenges, they're in the midst of a divorce. And so we have a group here called Divorce Care. And she went to that group recently, and she was telling me about it. She said, Pastor Kevin, that group and those people, they get me. They know what I'm going through because they're all in divorce care for a reason. And they said they prayed for me, and I got a chance to pray for them. And she was just going on and on about the group and how important and valuable the group was to her. And can I say that that's the way groups are here? And I just want to encourage you, don't go through this thing alone. Go through this thing with somebody else. So Paul's saying, here's how to joy-proof your life, right? 1, see life from God's perspective. Zoom out and see it from God's perspective. Number 2, give God control. And here's number 3. Paul tells the church in Philippi, the same he's telling us today. Number 3, trust God's plan. He's the master chef. He's got a plan. Look what it says in verse 19. For I know that as you pray for me, and as the Spirit of Jesus Christ helps me, this will all turn out for my deliverance. And I love this about Paul, because what he's talking about here is what I call the faith factor. The faith factor is putting this all in the hands of God. The pain, the people, the pressure, the problems. He's placing it all in God's hands. And he says, I don't try to work them out on my own. I don't try to put everything all back together again on my own. He says, I trust God to put them together again because He is the master chef. And can I invite us? One of the things we do here at this church to help us surrender our lives and our stuff and all the stuff we have going on in our lives, one of the ways we reconnect with God, one of the ways we disconnect from planet Earth and reconnect with God, one of the ways we do that on the weekend is with worship. That first segment of our weekend service where we worship God, the band plays, we worship God, is powerful. It is powerful. I can't explain it all, everything that happens, because there's so much that happens. It's magical, it's mystical, it's supernatural, it's transcendent. It's the way, one of the ways that God allows us to connect with Him, to sense His Spirit, and to align our spirits with His Spirit is with this thing called worship, which we do at the beginning of our weekend services. And I want to encourage you. We spend the first part of every service worshiping. And can I tell you, we don't do that just to give you time to get here. Somebody going, he caught me. No. Look. I just want to, so here's what I want to do. I'm not shaming anybody. This is a no shame zone. Okay, we don't do that here at this church. We invite you in. So, what I want to do is I want to invite you into something. I want to give you a challenge. I want to invite you into a challenge. Ready? Here's my challenge. This is not easy for us to do in Miami. We are tiempo Latino. Whether you are Latino or not, you have learned the Miami ways. And that is show up late for everything. So can I invite us? Because this service starts at 6:15, and we start on the dot at 6:15. And can I invite us? Here's my challenge to us. For the next 6 weeks of this series, can I invite us to adjust your life a little bit? And can I invite us to get here and to arrive 10 minutes early before the service starts? So we're going to arrive at 6:05 for this service. 6:05. And you're going to, so you go, why? Pastor Kevin, what's the big, okay, first of all, you can find a parking spot, although on Saturday night it's not all that difficult to find a spot. But secondly, you get here early. You can grab your cup of coffee. You can check your kids in. You can chill a little bit. You can find your seat. And the band begins, and now you're going to engage from the opening song to the finishing song. And I'm telling you, something happens in our spirits when we experience worship. Something happens in us. It just does. I'm telling you, it just does. I wish I could be this master communicator and give you all the whys, but I'm telling you, there's something magical, mystical, spiritual, supernatural, transcendent about what happens when we worship God. My heart connects with God's heart And there's like the download and an upload, and there's all these things that happen during worship. And I just want to encourage you. So, for the next 6 weeks, if you accept this challenge, we're going to get here 10 minutes early. We're going to arrive at 6:05. And this room is going to be full by the time the band starts. Now, look, I'm going to even give you a money-back guarantee. Try it for 6 weeks. If you don't think it makes a difference, then keep coming late. Okay, that's your money-back guarantee. Well, just try. Look. I know you got stuff, and you got kids, and you got stuff that happens, and you got, it's not always easy. I get it. But can I just invite us? Can I invite us for the next 6 weeks to try and get here 10 minutes early and just see what God might do in our soul for the next 6 weeks as we enjoy this worship time together? Would you pray with me tonight? Would you pray with me as we wrap up in a closing prayer here? It's just a simple way right now of just connecting with God. He is the master chef. And I want to offer you one word tonight during this prayer time. Here it is. Here's the word. Would you surrender? Would you surrender? All the things, the circumstances in your life that are negative, that are driving you crazy, that are trying to rob you of your joy. Would you surrender them to God tonight? Even right now, as we're praying, just surrender them to God right now. People. We talked about different kinds of people. There's many more kinds than what I talked about tonight. Would you surrender them? Would you surrender things, circumstances, people, yourself? Would you surrender yourself to God tonight the way Paul surrendered himself to God? Because Paul said, look, all these things, I believe there is a God who is a master chef who's going to be using these things in my life to create something beautiful and delicious out the other side that I will never see. But Paul said, my life is yours, God. My life is yours. And I just want to invite us tonight to surrender. That our life is in God's hands. And so would you put your life in God's hands again? Now for many of us, we have placed our life in God's hands, but if we get honest, have we placed our total life in God's hands? Or have we placed 75% of it or 80% of it? Can I invite you tonight to place 100% of your life in God's hands? Your relationships in God's hands. Your work in God's hands. Your career, your dream in God's hands. Would you place it all in God's hands? Because He is the master chef, the master artist, the master orchestrator. He sees you. He knows you. He has your best interest at heart. And God will work all things together for good in our lives if we surrender our lives to Him. And so maybe tonight, if there's never been a moment in your life where you have surrendered your life to God, can I invite you to do that right here, right now? I'm going to say a simple prayer. And if this is what you want to surrender your life to Jesus tonight the way Paul did, and what we talked about tonight, then I just want to invite you. I'm going to pray a prayer out loud. You just pray it inside. Just pray it inside. Say, Jesus, tonight, I surrender to you. I give my life to you. I say yes to you. I believe you can do better with my life than I can. I need you in my life. And I surrender my life to you tonight. God, I thank you for what you're doing in our hearts and our lives. And I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.